We were just like any other couple. We met in college, fell in love, and got married. We had our share of good times and not so good times, but that's what marriage is all about, right? One thing that never seemed to be a problem was our intimacy. We had a healthy, active sexual life. It was a vital part of our connection, something that brought us closer together. I always believed that keeping the flame alive between us was essential to a happy marriage. We were just like any other couple out there, the kind you might see on a regular day, holding hands and sharing secrets. Our story began in college where we crossed paths, hearts collided, and love blossomed. Like any pair madly in love, we couldn't imagine a future without each other, and so we decided to tie the knot. We made sure our intimacy was a priority, always finding time for each other despite the busy schedules life threw our way. Our connection ran deep, not just physically but emotionally too. We shared our dreams, our fears, and our hopes for the future. Our love was a beautiful tapestry woven from countless threads of shared experience, and it grew stronger with every passing day. But then, as time moved on, something started to change. It wasn't a sudden shift. There was no lightning bolt from the sky, but more like the gradual erosion of a once sturdy foundation. At first, I couldn't put my finger on it. I just knew that the harmony we once had was slipping away. Our normal routine began to shift, and I started noticing subtle changes in my wife's behavior. It was as if the familiar rhythm of our lives had suddenly started to play a different tune. Once upon a time, she used to come home from work at a reasonable hour, her eyes sparkling with excitement to see me and the kids. Her laughter would fill the house, and her warmth enveloped it like a cozy blanket on a chilly evening. Those were the moments that made the challenges of everyday life seem insignificant. But gradually, her arrival time started stretching into the late hours of the evening. Those eyes, that no amount of makeup could cover, dimmed. The once sparkling eyes, the warm greetings that used to make my heart skip a beat, now felt rehearsed, like lines in a play she had performed too many times. It was as if the magic had slowly drained from our interactions, leaving behind a sense of unease. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I knew all too well the pressures of a demanding job and the long hours that could sometimes spill into the evening. After all, I had experienced the grind of the corporate world myself, and I understood the sacrifices it often demanded. I wanted to believe that this was just a phase of a challenging project that required her unwavering attention. It was easy to chalk it up to the ebb and flow of life and reassure myself that things would eventually return to normal. But it was the frequency of these late nights that began to raise suspicions in my mind. It wasn't an occasional overtime session or rare emergency that kept her at the office. It was becoming a pattern, a routine that seemed to be growing with each passing week. She'd mention office stuff that required her attention, and while that was entirely plausible, something about it didn't sit right with me. Perhaps it was the way she said it, her voice carrying a hint of uncertainty, as if she were trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. Or maybe it was the elusive nature of these office stuff sessions. She would rarely go into detail, and the vague explanations left me feeling like an outsider in our professional world, disconnected from the challenges and triumphs that had once been an integral part of our shared journey. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, my unease grew. I knew that something was amiss, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. There was a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach, a silent alarm that refused to be silenced. I wasn't ready to jump to conclusions just yet, but I knew that I had to tread carefully, to watch and wait, and to gather more information before confronting her about these unsettling changes. Then there were those mysterious packages that began showing up on our doorstep with increasing regularity, like clockwork. They stood out like enigmatic puzzle pieces waiting to be deciphered. These parcels contained dresses and outfits that were unlike anything my wife had ever worn before. They weren't the practical attire of a business professional rushing to meetings or the comfortable casual clothes of a mom constantly on the go. No, these garments were something entirely different. They were daring, provocative, and utterly out of character. I couldn't help but wonder where these tantalizing ensembles were coming from. Each package seemed to be a whisper of secrecy, a clue to a puzzle I had yet to comprehend. The dresses were adorned with intricate lace, plunging necklines, and daring slits, the kind of clothing that could easily make heads turn. They were pieces meant for a different stage and a different role, and they left me perplexed. It would have been easy to address this directly, to confront her about these delivery, and to demand answers. But something held me back, a nagging doubt that whispered in my ear, urging me to tread carefully. I knew that jumping to premature conclusions could lead to misunderstandings that might be difficult to undo. Instead, I chose a different path, one of observation and patience. I decided to keep my discoveries to myself, at least for the time being. I believed that there must be a rational explanation for her behavior and the sudden wardrobe overhaul. Perhaps it was a new hobby, a fashion trend she had become enamored with, or even a surprise she was planning for our relationship. I desperately clung to these possibilities, not wanting to face the reality that nagged at the edges of my consciousness. I continued to secretly watch as she received these packages, each one more daring and alluring than the last. They arrived with no return addresses, no notes, just these tantalizing garments, as if they were sent from a shadowy admirer. My wife would open them discreetly, her eyes reflecting a mix of anticipation and curiosity. It was as though she had a secret life, one that was unfolding before my eyes in plain sight. As the weeks passed, my anxiety deepened, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of distance between us. I missed the woman who would laugh, whose eyes would light up when she looked at our children, and who would share our hopes and dreams with me. But she seemed to be slipping away, drawn into a world that I couldn't quite grasp. I knew that sooner or later I would have to confront the reality of these strange delivery and the changes in our behavior. But for now, I held my silence, hoping against hope that there was a rational explanation for all this, something that would make sense of the inexplicable. I wanted to believe that our love was strong enough to weather whatever storm lay ahead, even as the clouds grew darker on the horizon. Later on, her late nights away from home showed no signs of abating. She'd slip out in the evening, offering explanations of important meetings with clients that required her to travel. On the surface, her words seemed entirely legitimate, the kind of explanation that any devoted spouse would readily accept. To be honest, I wanted desperately to believe her. I clung to the hope like a lifeline in a stormy sea. The idea that her absence was merely a byproduct of a demanding job felt like the most reasonable explanation. After all, I had experienced the relentless grind of corporate life myself, so I understood the pressure it could exert. Yet, no matter how much I tried to convince myself that her absences were work-related, a persistent, nagging feeling in my gut told me otherwise. It was as if my intuition, that silent compass that guided my decisions, refused to be silenced. It whispered to me in the darkness of night, urging me to pay attention to the signs and to question the legitimacy of her explanations. Her increasing absence began to cast a long shadow over our family life. Her extended absences left a void in our home that was audible and felt hollow. Our children, those innocent souls who had come to rely on the presence of both parents, felt her absence keenly. They would often ask when Mommy would be home, their voices tinged with a mixture of longing and confusion. They missed her warmth, her laughter, and her reassuring hugs. Her absence left them feeling adrift, and I found myself taking on the role of both parents, attempting to fill the void as best as I could. I became the one who prepared their meals, guided them through their homework, and tucked them into bed at night. I became their source of comfort when they missed their mother's lullabies and bedtime stories. It was a challenging and sometimes overwhelming task, juggling my own responsibilities with the emotional needs of our children. I couldn't help but worry about the toll this was taking on them. Childhood is a precious and fleeting time, and I wanted nothing more than for our kids to experience the love and care of both parents. But my wife's increasing preoccupation with her own world seemed to overshadow that fundamental need, and it broke my heart to see the impact it had on our family. The weight of responsibility bore down on me, and I knew that something had to change. I couldn't let this situation persist indefinitely, and I couldn't continue to watch our family drift further apart. It was time to confront the unsettling truths that had been lurking beneath the surface, and to seek answers to the questions that had plagued my thoughts for far too long. This period was particularly tough on our kids. They were innocent souls caught in the crossfire of a situation they couldn't possibly understand. It pained me to see how our actions were affecting them. They needed her presence, her love, and her guidance, but she seemed too preoccupied with her own world to notice their needs. As their father, I had to step up, ensuring that their lives remained as stable and nurturing as possible. I prepared their meals, helped them with their homework, and comforted them when they missed their mother. It wasn't easy, juggling my own work and taking on her responsibilities, but I couldn't let my children suffer. One evening, as I was assisting her in packing for another one of her supposed business trips, a moment occurred that would change everything. I reached into the small compartment of her car to grab something she needed, and that's when I found it, used condoms tucked away discreetly. My heart plummeted, and a wave of disbelief washed over me. Why would she have these in her car, especially if she was going on a business trip? The puzzle pieces were slowly falling into place, but I couldn't jump to conclusions just yet. I needed concrete evidence before confronting her. With a heavy heart and a growing sense of dread, I reached a crossroads in my life that I never could have foreseen. I was faced with an unsettling reality, a truth that begged to be uncovered, no matter how painful it might be. It was a choice I never imagined I would make, a decision that would change the course of our lives forever. I hired a private investigator. As I dialed the number and listened to the phone ring, I couldn't help but feel enough uncertainty tightening in my stomach. This was uncharted territory for me, a step into the unknown, and the gravity of my decision weighed heavily on my shoulders. I knew that once I took this path, there would be no turning back. It was a decision that I made out of a desperate need for explanations and a desire to learn the truth, which had eluded me for far too long. Our first meeting with the private investigator was a somber affair, taking place in a dimly lit office that seemed tailor-made for clandestine meetings. He was a man of few words, his eyes betraying the wisdom of someone who had seen it all. As I poured out my concerns and suspicions, he listened attentively, his expression a mask of professional detachment. He assured me that he had handled countless cases like this before, each one a unique puzzle waiting to be solved. His calm demeanor offered a glimmer of hope in a situation fraught with uncertainty. I handed over what little information I had, her schedule, the strange packages, and the unsettling late-night departures. It was all I had to offer, the breadcrumbs of a mystery I couldn't comprehend. The private investigator nodded, promising to conduct a thorough and discreet investigation. And so the journey into the unknown began, a journey that would take us down a labyrinthine path of deception, betrayal, and hidden desires. It was a journey filled with uncertainty, where every step forward brought us closer to the heart of the darkness I never could have imagined. As the private investigator meticulously gathered information and followed my wife's movements, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Hope and fear warred within me, each day bringing with it a sense of trepidation as we waited for the pieces of the puzzle to fall into place. Little did I know that the revelations that lay ahead would shatter the facade of our once ordinary marriage, exposing a web of secrets that would challenge the very foundation of our love. As he continued to closely monitor my wife's activity, the tangled web of secrets began to unravel before our eyes. The trail led us to a different state, into a city far removed from the familiarity of our home. One evening, the private investigator's surveillance led him to an upper-class club in the heart of the city. It was a place where the glitterati gathered, where secrets were whispered behind closed doors, and where desire wore a mask of opulence. It was the kind of place that was far removed from the life we had built together. He discreetly followed my wife inside, the soft glow of neon lights casting long shadows on the plush carpets and velvet-lined walls. He watched as she met a man, a stranger whose presence in her life had remained hidden from me. Their exchange was brief, lasting no more than 30 minutes, but it was enough to confirm my worst fears. Then, he managed to discreetly snap a few photographs as they parted ways. It was in those fleeting moments that the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The photographs captured a connection that was more than casual, a spark of something forbidden and secretive. But the shock didn't end there. The investigator observed them leaving the club together, carrying a set of compact cameras and light equipment, enough to make a video of their act. It was a revelation that sent a shiver down my spine. The pieces of the puzzle had begun to form a picture that I never could have fathomed. As the private investigator relayed these chilling discoveries to me, it felt as though the ground had shifted beneath my feet. The evidence was undeniable, and the truth I had feared confronting had come crashing down around me. The woman I had shared my life with, the mother of our children, had been living a double life, one hidden in the shadows of secrecy and desire. The photographs and the investigator's detailed report painted a vivid picture of a betrayal that cut deep. It was a betrayal not only of our marriage vows, but of the trust that had been the cornerstone of our relationship. There was no turning back. The journey into the unknown had taken an even darker and more treacherous turn, one that would leave scars that might never fully heal. The unraveling of my wife's secret life took another shocking turn the following day. With the private investigator's watchful eye never wavering, my wife embarked on a journey that would expose a realm of indulgence and secrecy beyond my wildest imagination. She checked into another lavish 5-star hotel nestled in the opulent heart of the city. This was a place where extravagance knew no bounds and where luxury was an everyday affair. It was a stark contrast to the life we had shared, a life that had seemed ordinary until these revelations came to light. Intriguingly, she was not alone in this venture. She had joined a group of couples, their identities shrouded in a veil of secrecy. They gathered for breakfast, their conversations masked by cryptic whispers, and they exchanged glances laden with unspoken desires. As the morning unfolded, my wife and her companions made a decision that would further expose the depths of their hidden world. They decided to rent a rental home with a rooftop unlike any other, a room with walls but access to the sky above. The private investigator decided to deploy his drone, a technological marvel that would provide an aerial perspective of the unfolding events. With the drone high above, he watched as my wife and her companions engaged in activities that sent shockwaves to my soul. The drone's camera captured images that were both mesmerizing and horrifying. It revealed a moment of reckoning that left me feeling a deep sense of sorrow and disbelief. As I watched the aerial footage, it felt as though I had been transported to a different reality, one that existed outside the boundaries of the life we had built together. She and her companions, along with each of the other couples, were engaging in sexual activity and gratifying each other while taking brief turns. The private investigator's drone had captured a moment of profound revelation, one that would forever alter the course of our lives. The complexities of my wife's hidden life had been exposed in a way that left no room for denial or doubt. It was a truth that cut deep and would further shake the foundation of my marriage. As he delved deeper into the intricacies of my wife's hidden life, he stumbled upon a labyrinth of online identities, each one revealing a facet of her clandestine world. With meticulous skill, the private investigator managed to unearth my wife's other social media accounts, profiles that existed beyond the reach of my knowledge. These digital alter egos painted a picture of a life that she had carefully concealed from me, a life filled with connections and interactions that I could never have imagined. Among the startling discoveries was her OnlyFans account, a revelation that struck me like a bolt of lightning. OnlyFans was a platform known for its explicit content, a place where individuals could share intimate moments with subscribers willing to pay for access. I had never fathomed that my wife, the woman I had shared my life with for years, would be involved in such a venture. The private investigator, recognizing the gravity of these digital revelations, felt compelled to share his findings with me. The truth, no matter how painful, needed to be unveiled. With a heavy heart, he presented me with the evidence, the profiles, the interactions, and the explicit content that had remained hidden from my view. As I looked at the screen, scrolling through the profiles and the messages, a profound sense of betrayal washed over me. It was as though the woman I had known, the mother of my children, had become a stranger. Her online personas were a stark contrast to the person I thought I knew. The profiles were filled with suggestive photographs, explicit conversations, and connections that extended far beyond the boundaries of our marriage. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, shock, and profound sadness. It was a reality I could no longer deny, a truth that had been laid bare before me. My wife had led a double life, one that had remained hidden in the shadows of the digital world, a life that had shattered the trust and intimacy we had once shared. As I sat in the dimly lit room, my heart heavy with anticipation, he presented me with a thick envelope. It contained the written report of the PI, a detailed chronicle of all the events that had occurred with my wife, a document that would serve as the final reckoning of our marriage. The envelope felt heavy in my trembling hands as I carefully extracted the contents. It began with my initial observations of my wife's changed behavior, the late nights away from home, and the mysterious packages that had arrived on our doorstep. With each page I turned, the story of my wife's hidden life unfolded before me. The report chronicled her visits to upscale clubs, her encounters with strangers, and the shocking aerial footage captured by the investigator's drone. It detailed her secret rendezvous, the digital personas she had created, and the explicit content shared on her OnlyFans account. It was a narrative of betrayal, desire, and the unraveling of a once ordinary marriage. As I reached the final pages of the report, a profound sense of sadness washed over me. As I placed the report back into the envelope, I knew that I could no longer turn a blind eye to the reality that had been revealed. The evidence was irrefutable, and the betrayal was undeniable. The woman I had loved and trusted had ventured into a world I could never have foreseen, a world that had shattered the foundations of our marriage. It was a truth I could no longer ignore, a truth that would ultimately lead to a decision I had never imagined I would have to make. The weight of the evidence presented in the private investigator's report bore down on me like a heavy burden. The truth had been laid bare, and I could no longer deny the reality of my wife's actions. In the days that followed, I found myself grappling with a decision I had never imagined I would have to make. Divorce was a painful word, one that carried the weight of shattered dreams and broken promises. But the revelations of my wife's actions had shaken the very foundation of our marriage, leaving me with no other choice. I knew that the path to divorce would be fraught with emotional turmoil, not just for me but also for our children. As I began the process of discussing divorce with my wife, she begged for mercy, her eyes filled with desperation and remorse. She revealed that she had sought help from a psychiatrist who had diagnosed her with nymphomania, a condition characterized by uncontrollable sexual desire. She claimed that this diagnosis was the root cause of her actions and made a plea for understanding and forgiveness. I couldn't help but feel torn. On one hand, I had loved this woman for years, and the thought of her suffering from a mental health condition was heartbreaking. I wanted to believe that she was genuinely remorseful, and that she had not intentionally set out to hurt our family. But on the other hand, the damage had been done, trust had been shattered, and the wounds ran deep. I sought the counsel of a therapist myself, trying to navigate the treacherous waters of my emotions. The therapist helped me understand that while my wife's diagnosis shed light on her behavior, it did not excuse the choices she had made or the impact those choices had on our family. The decision to divorce was not made lightly. It was a painful and agonizing process, one that left scars on both of our hearts. The pain of betrayal had now overshadowed the love that had once brought us together, and the future was uncertain. In the end, I made the decision to put our children's welfare first because they had already suffered greatly as a result of the upheaval in our family. The divorce was finalized, and we parted ways, our lives forever changed by the revelations that had shattered our once ordinary marriage. My wife's diagnosis would be a part of her journey towards healing, but it could not erase the pain of the past or the scars that marked the end of our relationship. As we went our separate ways, the road ahead was uncertain, but it was a path we had to walk for the sake of our children and for our own well-being. In the aftermath of the divorce, our lives took different paths. As the dust settled on the divorce, my wife's life took an unexpected turn. Freed from the constraints of our marriage and left to her devices, she found herself on a path that led to newfound wealth and success. The material riches she accumulated were substantial, but they came at a cost that went far beyond the balance in her bank account. Her financial success was nothing short of remarkable. She ventured into a business endeavor that flourished beyond her wildest expectations. Her investments paid off handsomely, and her bank statements began to boast numbers that most people could only dream of. She acquired luxury cars, designer clothing, and a sprawling mansion that seemed to epitomize success. Yet beneath the facade of opulence and extravagance, she remained emotionally broken. She had severed the bonds of trust and love that had once connected us, and the guilt and remorse weighed heavily on her conscience. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my life, finding solace in the time spent with our children. They became the anchor that kept me grounded, a source of light and hope amid the darkness of divorce. Their laughter, their hugs, and their presence provided a sense of purpose and healing that I desperately needed. The divorce had marked the end of an era, a chapter in my life that I would never forget but needed to leave behind. The divorce had been a painful ending, but it also opened the door to a future filled with possibility. In the end, everything still ended in divorce, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by resilience, growth, and the unwavering love I held for our children. The journey ahead would be different, but it was a journey I was determined to face with courage and hope. The story portrayed the wife's infidelity as being connected to her diagnosis of nymphomania, a condition characterized by an overwhelming and uncontrollable sexual desire. However, it is crucial to acknowledge that this is a specific circumstance and should not be considered a universal explanation for why someone may engage in adultery. In this particular situation, it appears that there was a deficiency in open communication between the husband and wife regarding her condition and her needs. The lack of communication may have played a role in her choice to find fulfillment outside of the marriage. In order to avoid such situations, it is essential for partners to consistently engage in open and honest communication regarding their emotions, requirements, and worries. In the event that problems arise, it can be beneficial to seek assistance from a professional counselor or therapist. They can offer valuable strategies to enhance communication and effectively resolve conflicts. It is crucial to prioritize the establishment of trust and the establishment of clear boundaries in any relationship.
How do you feel about the OP story? We appreciate you joining us for yet another compelling story where justice is the main focus. So that you don't miss our next story, remember to subscribe. Everyone deserves honesty and loyalty in their relationships. Stay tuned for more captivating stories, but keep in mind that viewers should exercise caution as these stories may include mature subjects.